So in this interview, it's Jonathan Ross and the actor Tom Hardy. The interview is about promoting his new film Warriors. Before Tom Hardy even comes out onto the stage, we're told who he is and what he's famous for. We're also told how much weight he had to put on for Bronson and Warriors before the interview starts. I think that's because if you tell someone about the constant weight changes he has to go through, it kind of shows commitment to roles, and I think that will make people like him before he even comes out on the stage.
Therefore, the reason for this interview is to make the audience emotionally adapt to Hardy and to buy into him as a product, as if he's a brand himself. The brand.
The interview starts off talking about Bronson, and Ross starts saying about how it's a remarkable film and tells him, "You're an amazing actor." Ross is confident is building here, and he's being friendly so that Tom will open up to him and give up more information and exclusives. It also promotes Bronson, as it was not a huge film, and now he's trying to get the audience interested, as it was an independent produced film.
Ross is being very informational here, and he's also enhancing the audience's understanding. He's basically, bigging Tom Hardy up, so that people know that he's a good upcoming actor and he's going to be big, which he goes on to be. But while this interview is being filmed, he wasn't that big, but he did go on to be a huge actor and a huge success.
Ross also introduces the fact that Tom Hardy will be playing Mad Max, and he points out and gestures to to Hardy as the audience cheers, and Tom Hardy looks at Ross and the audience, and he looks kind of uncomfortable. He doesn't really. He looks very awkward and uncomfortable. He doesn't really like the attention. He's very humble. I think that's what would make the audience like him even more. Ross also does this to enhance the audience's information about who he is and what he does.
So he's training you at the moment. What's he training you for at the moment? What's your next thing that you're doing?
We're doing Mad Max in Australia.
Hang on a second. He's going to be Mad Max, ladies and gentlemen.
With this section of the interview, you could argue that it's combative, but not explicitly combative. For the fact of Tom Hardy isn't used to being in the spotlight, and Jonathan is like, he's trying to promote Mad Max, which might be something that Hardy's not allowed to talk about yet, which kind of makes it a bit awkward. But of course, it's not Hardy's fault. He's not used to having that kind of reaction towards him, and he might not be able to talk about Mad Max yet, which, again, like I said, makes it quite awkward and therefore quite combative. Ross starts talking about Warriors, which is, of course, the film that Tom is there to promote. So I think you can kind of see Tom relax a little bit when they start talking about that, because that's obviously why he's there. And so far, Ross has kind of dominated the conversation, so this gives Tom that kind of breathing space to actually talk about something that he's comfortable with, because he's been talking about films that he's currently in the making of, and he might not be comfortable talking about those because he could get in trouble with his managers or the producers or the director. So you can kind of see him relax a little bit when they start talking about Warriors.
He kind of asks him, what was the kind of weight training you had to do, how many days a week did you have to train, how much weight did you lose, how much weight did you put on.
Well, that is an impressive set of guns you're sporting in that clip. So you bulk up for part of that, you get fit. How do you train for part of that? And then when you want to lose the weight, what's your secret?
And they also joke about how one of Tom Hardy's co-actors didn't realise he'd broken his neck because of the adrenaline running through him. And Jonathan kind of makes a joke out of that.
I think the impact of Ross being promotional is a good one. I mean, when he's talking about Warriors and Bronson, he's really, really good at promoting and confidence building. But I think if there's a film that's in the process of being made or hasn't come out yet, he should kind of ask in a joking way, like, oh, can we talk about this? Just to make sure that his guests are okay with it.
To wind up the interview, he just kind of goes, oh, just before you go. And that makes him feel like, that makes the audience kind of know the interview's coming to an end. Maybe if the audience were getting bored with the interview, they know to stay on because the cast of Glee were going to be on next, so it makes them not change the channel.
And that makes him very informational at this point in the show.
Investigative, he's very, investigative really asked about his substance and alcohol abuse. This makes the audience feel bad for Tom, and it makes him very relatable, like he's a normal guy, he has normal problems.
However, it could have had a really, really bad effect, considering this is Tom's first interview about his films. It didn't put him in a very good light talking about his alcohol and substance abuse, considering that's a very serious thing to talk about. And considering Ross is meant to be promoting this person, I think by doing that, all the confidence building that he'd done at the beginning was kind of damaged within these few questions. And I think so was their relationship a little bit. I think Tom was just starting to feel comfortable. And then Ross dragged something like that up from his past, which is something obviously very emotional. And it makes Tom very vulnerable. And I don't think it was fair for him to do that. I don't think that was a very good thing for him as an interviewer to bring up while he's meant to be promoting him. I think he kind of tries to bring it back though when he says to Tom, like, how long have you been sober? And then Tom's like 7 years. But then it kind of backfires again because Tom doesn't want to be praised for that. He doesn't want to be praised for being sober for 7 years because it shouldn't have happened in the first place, and he looks extremely uncomfortable in this shot. So again, I think he tried to do the right thing and bring it back, but it kind of backfired again.
When did you stop drinking? How long have you been sober for, as they say?
7 years.
7 years? Well, that's quite some time. That's quite something.
Like I said, you can just see how uncomfortable Tom looks. He won't really look at the audience, but he won't really look at Ross either. So he just kind of looks away. And Ross is trying to be like close to him. In like you can see his chair, he keeps moving it forward, and his legs are crossed, and he keeps leaning over towards him. I think he's trying to make him feel I think he's trying to make him feel comfortable, but in reality, it's making Tom feel a bit maybe intimidated and uncomfortable, because you can just see it in his face. He didn't want that kind of attention. He's there to promote his film. He didn't want to talk about his past, and I think he took it quite well, and he could have a joke and a laugh about it, but in reality, I don't think he wanted to talk about it all, and you could see that by his body language. He kept kind of close, and he kept holding his knee into himself, and I think that was just a sign that he was completely uncomfortable with the whole thing. Jonathan Rossi's interviews are usually quite light-hearted, but I think because of this, because it's Tom's first interview, I think maybe he started asking these like kind of heart-wrenching, emotional questions about his past, so that the audience kind of, they get to know him, so that like maybe when they go out and talk to their friends and like, oh yeah, this Tom Hardy guy, he's like a really good actor, blah blah blah, he's had some trouble in his past, and maybe that would make people relate to him more. And I think that's what he was trying to aim to do, but again, I think it just kind of backfired a little bit and made him look a little bit bad. And I think the effect it had on the overall interview, I think it just made it a bit awkward. Yeah, I think it just made it like a bit uncomfortable. Like when I myself watched it, I felt uncomfortable. When like Tom, he just kind of went, no, like don't clap for me. And it looked uncomfortable to watch, let alone be there. Overall, I think Jonathan Ross was being, I think he was attempting to be light-hearted but also investigative. Just like I said before, to let the audience get to know Tom a bit more. Whereas his other guests, obviously, most of them are already famous, so the public kind of know everything about them anyway. Drug scandals and cheating and affairs, and the public know everything, so he wouldn't tend to bring that up in interviews. But because Tom's kind of a newbie into the celebrity world, I think he felt that the audience needed to know a bit about his past to get to know him as a person, and know that he's gone through all these hard times and look how much of a success he is. And I think he was trying to build him up, but again, it just kind of backfired. But I think overall he done quite well in this interview. He used loads of open questions for Tom, to let Tom explain himself and explain his situations and answers. And also he's done quite a few multiple questions, like when he was asking about his training again, he kept asking him like, what's your training, how much weight did you lose for this film, how much weight did you put on for this film, and he kept just asking. But I think sometimes that's a good thing to do. Again, I think it just adds to the lightheartedness. But yeah, I think overall this was a good interview.